Owning who I am, I didn't choose my height. I didn't choose the way the world would see me before they even heard my voice. I didn't choose the smirk from strangers, the double take, the whispered joke they thought I couldn't hear. I didn't choose to be underestimated before I even stepped into the room. But I did choose what I would do with it. When you're born different, the world gives you two options: fit their mold or break it. And let me tell you, fitting into their mold is a lot more comfortable at first. You keep your head down. You try to be invisible. You laugh along at jokes that sting just to avoid the awkward silence. You let yourself be defined by the thing they can see. Because fighting the definition feels exhausting. But here's the true thing: the cost of that comfort is your soul. For years, I tried to disappear in plain sight. If I don't make a fuss, maybe I'll be accepted. But acceptance built on silence isn't real acceptance. It's just permission to exist quietly. I wasn't born to be quiet. None of us are. Somewhere deep down, I knew that if I wanted a life worth living, I'd have to stop hiding in the shadow of other people's expectations. And I was afraid of change. And that's when I realized something: my height isn't a limitation unless I let it be. It's not a wall, it's a spotlight. The world is already watching. So why not give them something worth watching? It didn't happen overnight. Owning who I am was a long, messy process. It started with looking in the mirror and actually seeing myself, not the version shaped by other people's comments, but the real me. And I'll be honest, that was hard. It's easier to ignore the mirror when you've been taught your reflection is a flaw. But I learned to look until I didn't see a problem. I saw a person. Once I stopped apologizing for my existence, everything started to shift. See, when you carry yourself like you're not enough, the world believes you. But when you walk in like you belong, no matter what room it is, the world eventually has no choice but to agree. Confidence is not about being the loudest voice or the tallest presence. It's about saying, I am here, I matter, and I will not shrink to make you comfortable. Owning who I am meant embracing not just my height, but everything about me that was different. My voice, my face, my way of moving through the world. I stopped chasing the idea of normal, because normal is just a word people use when they're afraid of extraordinary. And here's the thing: when you own yourself fully, you give other people permission to do the same. That's power. That's change. I can't tell you how many times someone has come up to me, sometimes a kid, sometimes a grown man with tears in his eyes, and said, "You made me believe I could do it too." And every time, I think back to the moments when I almost gave up on myself. Imagine if I had. Maybe I was afraid of change. Imagine if I had decided the world was right about me. Those people wouldn't have had that spark. Maybe I was afraid. That's why owning yourself isn't just about you. It's about everyone watching, hoping you'll show them it's possible. Here's the truth: most people don't want to admit the world always have opinions about you. You can spend your life trying to change them, or you can spend your life being yourself so unapologetically that their opinions become background noise. I chose the second option. Was it easy? Absolutely not. There were auditions where the casting director barely looked up, meetings where I was told, "You're good," but the audience won't relate. Moments where I thought maybe they were right. But every time I considered giving in, I asked myself, if I quit, what am I teaching the next kid who looks like me? That answer kept me going. Owning who I am is not about pretending the obstacles aren't real. They are. It's about refusing to let those obstacles decide where my story ends. I stopped wishing for a different body and started asking, what can I do with this one? That shift was everything. It took me from waiting for an opportunity to creating one, from hoping to be invited in to building my own door. And here's the part I wish someone had told me sooner: the thing you think makes you unworthy might actually be the very thing that makes you unforgettable. My height, the very thing people thought would hold me back, became my signature. It made me stand out in an industry where blending in is the fastest way to disappear. It forced me to develop a voice of presence, a determination that might never have grown if I had been normal. I didn't just accept who I am, I claimed it, polished it, and turned it into my advantage. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt small, maybe not in body, but in spirit, hear me clearly. You are not defined by the box they put you in. You are not your label. You are not your limitation. You are the story you choose to tell about yourself. And when you own that story, when you speak it with your full chest, something incredible happens. The world starts to listen. Not because you fit their idea of a star, but because you made them expand their definition of what a star can be. I didn't grow taller. I didn't change the way I look. I changed the way I stood in my own skin. And that made all the difference. So now, when the world looks at me, I let them. Because I know what they're seeing. They're seeing someone who refused to shrink. Someone who took what he was given, lit it on fire, and turned it into something worth remembering. That's owning who you are. And it's the first step from being just an Amy to being a star. Of facing the world's gaze, I learned early on that the world will see you before they hear you. Before I could speak a word, I had already been summed up. Not by my actions, not by my heart, not by talent, by my height. When you're different, the gaze comes with you everywhere. You feel it when you walk into a room, when you stand in line at the grocery store, when you're just trying to exist without being a spectacle. It's not always cruel. Sometimes it's just curious, but it's constant. And constant can wear you down. I used to think the stares were a kind of mirror, reflecting who I was. But I learned they were only reflecting who they thought I was. Their eyes didn't know me, not yet. So I made a decision. If they were going to look, I'd make sure they saw more than just my size. That's the thing about facing the world's gaze. You can't avoid it. Not really. You can pretend not to notice. You can hide behind quiet corners. You can choose jobs and friendships that keep you out of the spotlight. But that gaze will always find you. And when it does, you have two choices: shrink under it or stand inside it. At first, I shrank. I let their eyes decide my place. If they expected me to be funny, I played the clown. If they expected me to be small in spirit, I obliged. If they didn't expect me at all, I disappeared. That's the trap. When you try to fit into other people's comfort zones, you stop living in your own skin. One day, something changed. I was on stage in a tiny theater, half the seats empty, the air thick with dust. And I realized the audience wasn't leaning forward for my height. They were leaning forward for my words, my presence, my truth. In that moment, I understood the gaze could be an enemy or it could be an invitation. So I stopped trying to hide from it. I started speaking into it. When you face the world's gaze with your full self, your voice steady, maybe act straight, your back straight, you take control of the narrative. They might start by seeing only your difference, but you can guide them to see your depth. That's not arrogance. That's self-respect. Of course, that's easier said than done. Some stares are sharp. They're not curious, they're dismissive. They strip you down to an object, a joke, a cautionary tale. Those are the ones that used to hurt the most. I'd walk home with their laughter still clinging to me like smoke. But here's what I'm realizing: their gaze only has the power I give it. It can pierce Meg or it can fuel me. So I started letting it fuel me. Every time someone looked at me and saw less, I worked harder to make sure the next person saw more. Every time someone doubted my ability to hold a room, I held it tighter. And something strange happened. The gaze began to shift. It wasn't gone, but it changed. People looked because they were curious, and then they looked because they were captivated. I remember the first time I walked off stage and someone said, "I forgot about your height halfway through." At first, I took that as a compliment. Then I realized, no, I don't want you to forget about it. I want you to see it, acknowledge it, and still recognize that it doesn't define me. Forgetting it isn't progress. Seeing past it is. Facing the world's gaze is about training people to look longer, not at the surface, not at the label, but at the person. That takes courage. It takes patience, and it takes showing up over and over, even when you'd rather walk away. There's a moment before you step into any spotlight. Whether it's a stage, a meeting, or just a crowded room where you feel every eye waiting to measure you, in that moment you can feel smaller than you are, or you can decide to fill the space anyway. I chose to fill it. And here's what happens when you dog. The gaze turns into attention, the attention turns into connection, and the connection turns into respect. Not overnight, not every time, but enough. Some people will always look at me and see only the obvious. That's fine. They're not my audience. My audience is the one that comes in with assumptions and leaves with questions about themselves, about the limits they've put on others, about the labels they've accepted without thinking. Facing the gaze isn't about winning over everyone. It's about not letting anyone's stare make you smaller than you are. It's about walking into every room like you have the right to be there, because you do. And let me tell you a secret: the moment you stop flinching under their gaze, you'll see that it's not as heavy as you thought. It's just light. And light, if you stand in it long enough, can make you shine. So now when I feel those eyes on me, I don't rush to look away. I meet them. I let them see the confidence I've built, the battles I've won, the self I've claimed. Because the world will always look. My job is to make sure they see more than they expected. That's how you face the world's gaze. Not by avoiding it, not by pretending it's not there, but by turning it into your stage. Breaking the wall, rejection, is loud. It doesn't whisper, it doesn't apologize. It slams the door in your face and dares you to knock again. When I first started chasing my dream, rejection was the most familiar voice in my life. Every audition, every meeting, thank you. Maybe I was afraid of change. We'll be in touch. That really meant you're not what we're looking for. It was a brick. One brick on top of another. Maybe I was afraid of change until there was a wall so high I couldn't see the other side. And here's the thing about walls, you can spend your life standing in front of them, staring at what you can't have, telling yourself it's impossible. Or you can start climbing. At first, I thought I'd just wait for someone to open a door and that wall for me. That's what we all hope for. A shortcut, a stroke of luck, a generous hand pulling us up. But the longer I waited, the more I realized the truth. No one was coming to open the door. In fact, there might not even be a door. So I stopped waiting. I started climbing. Climbing means hearing no and showing up anyway. It means reading a rejection letter and thinking, all right, watch me. It means pushing past the embarrassment, the self-doubt, the quiet voice in your head that says, maybe you're just not cut out for this. That voice, it's sneaky. It pretends to be logical. It says, why? Keep trying. Clearly, they don't want you. And some days I believed it, but I learned something: that voice isn't the truth. It's fear. And fear is only as strong as the power you give it. Every no I heard became a brick in my wall. Every time I got back up, I was taking one brick out. Slowly, painfully. But I was building something on my side of the wall too. Skill, resilience, a voice that was mine and mine alone. One of my earliest auditions, I remember walking into a room where they barely looked at me. They had already decided. My height had walked in before I did, and it had already lost the job. I left that day angry, not just at them, but at myself, for letting their lack of belief become my own. That was the day I made a promise saying, no one would outbelieve me when it came to my own potential. Breaking the wall isn't glamorous. It's not a montage with music swelling in the background. It's exhausting. It's lonely. And for a long time, you don't even know if you're making progress. But here's what I'm learning: every single time you try again, you're cracking that wall. Maybe you can't see the crack today, but one day, without warning, the light comes through. And when it did for me, it wasn't because the world suddenly decided I was worthy. It was because I had become undeniable. By the time that finally came, I had built so much strength climbing that wall that I was ready for the view on the other side. You see, a lot of people think the breakthrough moment is luck. It's not. It's preparation meeting persistence. It's all those years of not quitting, finally cashing in. And it feels different when you've had to fight for it. You don't just get through the wall. You own the path you carved. Of course, the wall doesn't vanish. Even now, there are new walls, higher walls, but I've learned how to approach them. I don't stand there asking, why me? Anymore. I look at the bricks, I find a foothold, and I start climbing. Because the moment you let a wall convince you it's permanent, you've already lost. Breaking the wall is not about brute strength. It's about relentless intent. It's about showing up with the belief that eventually the wall will run out of bricks before you run out of will. And here's the part, people: forgetting the wall is not just made of other people's doubts. It's made of your own. Every time you tell yourself you're enough, you're not laying another brick. Every time you let fear talk you out of trying, you're helping build it higher. So stop helping it grow. Start tearing it down. I can't tell you the exact moment when I became a star in the eyes of the world, but I can tell you exactly what it felt like the first time I walked into a room and realized the wall I'd been climbing for years was behind me. It didn't mean the journey was over. It just meant I had proven something to myself more than anyone else, that I could do it. And that's the thing. The real reward for breaking the wall isn't the applause, the roles, the recognition. It's knowing you didn't let it stop you. It's the quiet pride of saying, I could have given up, but I didn't. So if you're standing in front of a wall right now, wondering how you'll ever get past it, remember this, Uggs. The wall is only there to see how badly you want what's on the other side. And if you want it enough, you will find a way through, over, around, maybe even straight through the middle. And when you do, you'll discover that the wall wasn't really the obstacle. It was the training ground. Living without excuses, there's an easy way out of every dream and excuse. It's the most tempting thing in the world. It's soft. It's safe. It says, it's not your fault. You would have made it if only you were taller. If only you knew the right people. If only you'd been born somewhere else, to someone else with something else. I know that voice well. For years, it sat in the back of my mind like an old friend who meant well, whispering reasons why I couldn't try, why I shouldn't risk it, why it was better to stay comfortable. But here's the thing about excuses. They're a perfect prison. And the worst part, you're the one locking the door from the inside. When you live in excuses, you don't have to face the fear of failing, but you also don't get to face the thrill of winning. You stay exactly where you are, telling yourself that life just didn't deal you the right cards, and that's not a life. It's a sentence. One day, I decided I didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to look back and realize I'd built my own cage out of reasons and what ifs. I wanted to know, for better or worse, that I had emptied myself into the world and seen what I was capable of. So I made a ruling: no excuses. Not for my height, not for my past, not for the roles I didn't get, the people who didn't believe in me, the doors that stayed shut. I would try anyway. And here's the funny thing. When you stop using excuses, you start finding solutions. Suddenly, instead of saying, I can't, you're asking, how can I? And that tiny shift in language changes everything. I stopped blaming the industry for not having roles that fit me and started searching for the ones that could stretch to fit me. I stopped waiting for the perfect opportunity and started making the most of imperfect ones. I stopped thinking of my height as a reason to fail and started treating it as a reason to work harder, stand taller, and leave no doubt. Because talent isn't measured in inches. Heart isn't measured in inches. Determination, sure as hell, isn't measured in inches. Living without excuses means showing up on the days when you feel invisible, when the phone isn't ringing, when your best work gets ignored. It means pushing forward when it would be so much easier to stop and explain why it didn't work out. It's not about pretending the challenges aren't real. They are. It's about deciding they will not be your ending. You want to know the real difference between people who make it and people who don't. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not even timing. It's the refusal to quit when quitting is the most reasonable thing to do. And I'll tell you this, once you take away excuses, you find out what you're truly capable of. You learn how much strength you've been wasting on defending your limitations instead of breaking them. Living without excuses doesn't mean you'll never fail. You will. I have, many times. But every failure is better than a life lived safely in the shadows, wondering if you could have done it. I'd rather fall flat in the arena than stay comfortable in the stands. When I look back now, the thing I'm most proud of isn't the awards or the recognition. It's that I kept going when it made no sense to keep going. It's that I lived fully in a life that the world once tried to make smaller. I've learned this. You can spend your life explaining why you didn't do something, or you can spend your life doing it. One of those stories ends with regret. The other ends with legacy. The choice is yours. So when you leave here today, I want you to think about the wall you're standing in front of, the gaze you're afraid to meet, the part of yourself you're still apologizing for. And then I want you to imagine what would happen if you stopped making excuses for why you can't climb, can't speak, can't be exactly who you are at full volume. Because the truth is, you can. And when you do, when you own who you are, face the world's gaze, break the walls in your way, and live without excuses, something amazing happens. You stop waiting for permission to live. You start living. I was a boy who didn't fit the picture of a star. I was told no more times than I can count. I had every reason to make peace with a smaller life, but I didn't. And that's the only reason you know my name today, not because I'm lucky, not because I'm perfect, but because I refuse to let an excuse become my story. So here's my ending, my challenge to you, whatever your difference is, whatever your wall looks like, whatever gaze you're afraid to meet. Don't hide from it. Don't explain it away. Use it. Climb it. Face it. Live in spite of it, and then lie because of it. And maybe one day someone will look at you, not with pity, not with doubt, but with the same question I get now. How did you do it? And you'll smile, because the answer is simple. I stopped making excuses. And I started